and welcome to our very long and secretly awaited episode of This Week Live. In this episode, we are going to be talking about patriotism and Pinoy pride. So what does it mean to be a proud Pinoy, and just how can you serve your country? Find out in an all new episode of This Week Live. So, guys, I think this episode has had a long time coming. In the spirit of celebrating 122 years of kalayaan and independence, our celebration continues, and today we're going to be giving you a productive and progressive Filipino discussion with some very, very special guests and some millennials and Gen Zs and Filipinos all across the world. Hi, everybody. My name is Paolo. I will be hosting and moderating this live stream, and I would like to introduce our first guest. He is a rock star within the Filipino community, and he is a very seasoned diplomat. He is the Philippine Consul General to Dubai and Northern Emirates, Paul Raymond Cortes. Conjen, if you're there, would like you to greet the audience.
Sure. Thank you. Sorry. Thank you, Paolo. Thank you, and welcome to the rest of the guests here at the Illustrado Live. Thank you also for inviting me over. You just raised the age average with me in here.
Thank you so much, Conjen, for joining us. And our next special guest, we are so honored to have her. She is Miss Universe 2015, and she is a UNAIDS Goodwill Ambassador. She is none other than Pia Wurtzbach.
Hello, hi everyone. Thanks for inviting me here.
So, Pia, are we ready to talk progressive Filipino things? We got a little
Yes.
bit of tea to spill, and we have a lot of inspiring messages we hear from you.
Let's do it.
So let's go. Next in our lineup of guests, we have our millennial representative here and the strongest proponent of the, I think if it's still going on actually, the Wasted Youth campaign. And is our features editor pala, Alwee. Hello.
Hi guys, thank you for joining us. It's different this live stream because I'm going to be answering questions. I'm not going to be the one asking questions, so it'll be very interesting. But yeah, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for joining, Alwee. Next, we have Justin Cortes, who's also here with us today.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, and I'm excited to be a part of this.
So, Justin, we have a whole bunch of juicy questions that we're going to be asking you, so I hope you're prepared.
I tried to prepare as much as I can.
Don't worry, we're all just giving it our best at the end of the day. And we also have Andre Cortes joining us today.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, or us, as I should say.
Very nice. We have joining us, coming also from our first live stream, and now in this episode, we have Bettina Micu.
Hi everyone. Thanks for having me.
And we have another fellow Dubai kid who goes by the name Yuji Eldrick Los Baños. Say hello.
Good evening from Manila.
Good evening from Manila. How's the weather over there?
I can't tell. I've been stuck indoors.
Haven't we all? Joining us from Brooklyn, we have Francesca Manto.
Hi, Paolo. Thank you for having me.
Hello, and thank you for joining in. Good morning to you guys
Yeah.
in the USA.
Good morning.
Hope you all have your coffee because this is going to be our morning discussion. And speaking of another morning greeting, we have Michelle Macrohon from Subtle Filipino Traits, who's joining us from California.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Cool. And I think that's everybody, isn't it? Did I miss anybody out? No? And I think we're good. So today's topic is going to be a very timely, and we're going to be dropping quite a little bit of dropping tea. We're going to be spilling a little bit of tea here, and we're going to be talking a little bit of politics as well. We're going to be talking about patriotism and Pinoy pride. So just recently, we celebrated 122 years of freedom and independence as a nation. And we're going to be continuing that with this live stream today. So I'm going to move into our first question of our discussion tonight. And I want to ask Conjen Paul. We have about 800,000 Pinoys over here in the UAE. And across the world, we have 11 million Filipino expats. And everybody has gotten together to celebrate Kalayaan in what is probably, I think, I'd like to claim it at least, one of the biggest celebrations that we've ever experienced all across the world. So, Conjen, what does patriotism mean to you? Conjen, are you there? Yeah, Conjen is mute.
Sorry. It's a tough question, as I said. I was looking at the questions that you had posed, and it does, ring quite a difficult tone, especially when we try to answer it. But we've, for my family and I have been posted in 3 different continents: Europe, the Americas, and here in the Middle East. And the most difficult posting for us would be in the Middle East, primarily because of the makeup of the work and the makeup of the community as well. I wouldn't say the easy thing about the U.S., but the one that makes the U.S. and European Filipinos and the Filipino Americans different from the ones in the Middle East is how the people there, how the Filipinos there have a dash within them, meaning they've imbibed both the Filipino and the country of their that they live in now. So let's say if it's in the U.S., it's Filipino American. They also have U.S. traditions, American thinking, American perspectives into them. But for many Filipinos in the Middle East, you have a very, very strong sense of nationalism. Why? Well, obviously, one, they remain Philippine passport holders, and that is something that is very telling, and that's something that shapes a perspective as far as what some Filipinos are concerned. And patriotism, I guess, is staying true to your heritage, staying true to your roots. It doesn't necessarily mean just speaking Filipino or eating dinuguan or Filipino delicacies such as that, but it's understanding where the Filipino is coming from, his perspective, his cultural biases, his political ideology, and the way he perceives himself as a global citizen, especially looking at his citizenship, looking at his personality and his heritage vis-a-vis the environment he is in. And in this case, in the case of Dubai, it's within the context of a multi-linguistic and multicultural UAE community.
I see. Thank you for that very elaborate answer, Conjen. And I want to shift this question to Pia. Pia, you're a role model to so many Filipinos out there. In our eyes, you are also a figure of patriotism, and you are just adding to so much of what our country means too. You've inspired so many people, and you've really brought a new definition to what it means to be patriotic. But we want to ask you now, what does patriotism mean to you?
I think it's just being really proud of where you come from, no matter where life takes you, even if it takes you outside of the Philippines. I know that there are a lot of Filipinos all across the world. We're everywhere. I meet Filipinos everywhere I go, and that's great. But I love that they're also very proud to be Filipino. I've never met a Filipino who wasn't proud to be Pinoy. All of them, and it's like whenever I meet a Filipino abroad, especially, it's like seeing an old friend again. And that's what I love about Filipinos. There's this bayanihan and this family spirit, this community spirit, and I also love that even though we have Filipinos who grew up in different places all across the world, but they still carry their Filipino values with them. Sa akin, I mean, a lot of people have different definitions of what patriotism is, but to me, I think it's just really being proud of where you come from, and and waving that flag and waving that flag as what Catriona said. Yeah.
I love it because our idea of patriotism has gone beyond just supporting our country, and it's also about being proud of the ever-changing image that we have as Filipinos. And now I would like to ask some of our panelists about this next question. Recently, well, not so recently anymore, COVID-19 has become a thing, and the pandemic has affected virtually everyone around the world. Now more than ever, we have an incentive to stay at home, to emphasize social distancing, and at the same time, with the political situation that's happening in the Philippines, and with a lot of this news just going around and a lot of arguments even going on social media, how do you remain patriotic despite all of the difficulties that we're going through now? And I want to ask Alwee this question.
Yeah, well, that's a very hard question because I mean, patriotism it's a new concept to me. Like I never really knew about it until I moved to Dubai because I never had to when I was in the Philippines. Like here, you're meeting like a lot of other nationalities, and you get to share your heritage, your culture, your food, the stories of the town where you grew up. Those things. But staying patriotic during this time, it's about digging deep into your own roots. Sometimes you see, I've seen a lot of posts and I also relate to it. They said, ang hirap mong mahalin Pilipinas. And with the current situation, it's so true. But I think it's also the time for us to love our country even more and to fight for what's good for a lot of Filipinos, even though you're in the Philippines or you're not. I think we all can do something about it. We can use our voice using social media.
And I think, social media is also a very, very powerful tool for us to spread our activism and also to spread just in general any awareness and advocacies we have. So I want to ask Francesca. Francesca, you're over there in the US right now. So what's your take on this whole matter, especially knowing that there's so many things that we have to deal with online and in person with our immediate communities, and also even dealing with the news and political side of things?
I know. I mean, I think especially with COVID-19, I think I've been very overwhelmed, especially with everything happening in the world. And it can be a lot. But I think what I have kind of returned to is like really thinking about my values and trying to understand like what is really important to me. And a huge part of that is like my culture and understanding where I came from. And so there are a lot of things happening here in the US as well. And I think that like for me, it's important to be educated. Like even with my show Hello Hello, it's like I love educating people about our culture and our food. So I think like it starts with educating myself, and I do my best to learn. And I also admit like what I don't know. And I've also I've been very grateful because I've met and connect with a lot of other Filipinos around the world through social media. And they're the ones also educating me about what's happening in the world. So I think that's been like really the most important thing for me is that I can't go anywhere, but that doesn't mean that I can't grow as a person and also learn more and understand and then change my views. And then also share that with my followers. I think it's to keep the conversation going, essentially, is like what I've been trying to do.
Very nice. Keep the conversation going. And in keeping the conversation going, I want to ask Conjen. Conjen Paul, do you have any sort of input or advice on how we could handle this matter, especially now that the times are very challenging and that we have a voice that needs to be heard?
Sure. Let's just keep in mind that the COVID-19 pandemic and the crisis is not something anybody else planned. And as such, no single government was truly ever 100% or 110% prepared as to what to do. And everybody was just trying to grapple and grope for straws, as so to speak, and trying to find out exactly what we should be doing for our people. And well, the response of a lot of governments was to put out a lot of money for help, to help those who had been laid off, terminated, no work, no pay scheme. And clearly, there may not be enough for everyone involved. And for everybody to think that it is solely the government's responsibility to help each other, well, it is a rough awakening for a lot of people. And what is necessary also at this point is to understand that if the government, falls short, the community always also comes up with an effort on its own. This is not to say that the government should not do anything. In fact, all the more should it be more proactive in trying to find out ways and plan in these sorts of situations to help more people. But it also needs to link, to reach out to the rest of the other community to help other people out. And the beautiful thing with the Filipino community during the pandemic was that we saw exactly how people were helping out each other, consulate side, the government side, the UAE government side, and the Filipino community in trying to reach out to more of our kababayans who have been asking for help. And it's a beautiful thing because nobody said it's your job, it's my job, or whose job it was, but it's everybody else's job and everybody was just up for it.
Mm-hmm. Yuji, I also want to ask you, despite the tough times that we're in, and you yourself, you're in the Philippines right now, so for a lot of people, you could actually be in the center of so many big changes, political, societal, in the news as well, and in general, it's just a shift in mindset that we're experiencing. So how are you handling all of this? How are you coping with it?
Well, when I moved here 3 years ago for college, I started off at a disadvantage because I grew up in Dubai for 16 years. So I had virtually no memory of the Philippines before then. So when I came here, I was a blank slate. So when I started to learn about the condition of different groups here, when I started to learn about what it really meant to live in a Philippines, of 2017 past. And when I started to learn about certain conditions through friends in my college, I started to understand that we needed to take more action. And I was lucky to be in a university. I studied in the Ateneo de Manila. And so I was lucky to be in a university that's relatively progressive and that's relatively aware of what's going on, and that has a certain clout, that has a certain influence in society. And so I was able to talk to my friends. I was able to join specific groups. I was able to join student government groups in the Ateneo to help out concretely in the different communities, at least in Metro Manila. Now, I'm saying this and I'm prefacing this with the fact that I am privileged to be in the country so that I can help out directly. The other people, like me of 3 years ago, 4 years ago, did not have that same privilege. Fil-ams and other Filipino diaspora groups don't have that privilege of helping out directly or even understanding that there are things happening in this country because not a lot of people want to talk about it. Yeah.
I see. And I want to shift this to Bettina. Bettina, you're all the way in Dubai. You're with us right now. And for a large part, there are only so many things that we Filipinos over here can do in the way of actually directly helping out. But I think one thing, and we've seen you doing this quite a lot, is you've been active. You've been using social media to a very good extent. So how have you remained patriotic for the Philippines, despite all the frustrations that can arise from distance, disagreeing with other people, and such on, so on and so forth?
I mean, like you said, I'm all the way here in Dubai, so there's only so much I can do. But I am fortunate enough where I have a little bit of following on social media and I am able to use my platform. And I say this over and over again, and I'm about to spill a little bit of tea, but you know, if you're able to speak about international movements, it will not hurt you to care about what's happening in your own country. You know, people need to start using their platform. Filipino pride is not a hashtag or a passing trend. It is a choice, and it is not for your views. It may not be aesthetically pleasing on your feed, or you know, it may not be the number one trending movement in the world right now, but speak up for your fellow Filipinos because they need you too. And it's okay to start now. It's okay to start educating yourself now. It's never too late to change your opinion. It's never too late to speak up. But Filipinos need it now more than ever. So just use your platform. That's all we can do from afar, at least.
Now more than ever, it's perfectly viable that we actually use our platform and we use whatever following or whatever influence or simply whatever connections that we have in order to spread a mutual advocacy that we can all work towards, because we all need to be part of the solution. We need to embody that what we want to see within Filipinos. And I want to shift to Andre for this question. Andre, you're one of the sons of Conjen Paul. So patriotism really does run in the family. Being the son of a diplomat and also being connected to so many other community figures as part of the next generation. What's your take on this matter?
Growing up as a diplomatic child, I went from Europe to Asia to Americas. So I really had a lot of different other cultures into my brain. But my dad was always there for me, my dad was always there for me to educate myself about the Filipino culture. So when we moved to Hawaii, I was actually really surprised how big the Filipino community was, where all my students were actually Filipino, and I was really, really surprised. And yeah, as everyone said, everyone should it's never too late to educate yourselves. Our culture is really, really beautiful, and everyone in the world needs to learn about it, of course. Yeah. And showing patriotism is just basically having pride for your own country. And I suggest that for all upcoming younger generations who are outside the Philippines to learn about our own culture. And yeah.
That's very good. It's I think patriotism at the end of the day does not have to be at a certain level, because I think if you want to learn about your culture and if you want to learn about your stance as a Filipino, it's a good starting point. Justin, do you have any input that you'd like to add to the matter?
Well, it's the same answer as my brother. It's so easy, growing up as a diplomatic child. It's so easy to get lost, to lose grasp of the Filipino culture, because you're in different countries in which Filipino culture is not prominent. But like my brother said, it's my dad has always taught me how that I'm always going to be a Filipino, and that I should always remain connected to Filipino culture, no matter where I am.
Yeah. Culture does not need to have any solid roots anywhere. Any sort of practice, any tradition that you can do anywhere at any time, I think that's culture already. And now, Michelle, all the way in California, you guys at Subtle Filipino Traits have always been talking about culture, be it through memes or be it through actually sharing very helpful information. So I want to ask for your input. How do you stay patriotic, or how do you remain or how do you spread patriotism at a time like this when it's so easy to get frustrated?
Yeah, so the goal when initially creating Soda Filipino Traits was just to help share and connect the global Filipino community, right? And I think what's the cool thing about the culmination of our group was that I think it's undeniable that there's stereotypes within our community. But then people from the shadows who live in Indiana, a Filipino from Dubai or a Filipino living in China can express that this is what the Filipino experience is for me. And then they can come to our page and they can learn the other ways people are expressing their Filipino-ness. So it's important to have the memes and it's important to have the depth in conversations because some things are just easier to digest and some people are willing to share vulnerable experiences. And I think for a lot of us during this quarantine, it's a trying time because we're isolated in a space to maybe reflect on what's been going on. And we hope that this group provides inclusiveness and a safe space for people to just express what they're going through and how they're surviving through quarantine and what they're doing to line up their space and what activities they can do.
I see. Thank you for the insight. And again, I think it's all these little things and all these experiences that we actually can share as Filipinos and just in general as human beings from all across the world. That in itself is culture. It's the form of exchange and the form of expression through various means. And Pia, I want to shift this to you. What advice do you have for Filipinos who are getting frustrated right now?
Oh wow. Okay. It's try to ask yourself why. Really why? Why is this reaction coming from you? Kasi and I really don't think that the way to go is to go on social media and just post whatever you feel like there. Bahala na, ganyan. We should really be mindful of whatever we share. We never know who's gonna read that, who's gonna read your statement, who's gonna read your tweet or your status message, ganyan. Because nowadays, I see like a trend. Everybody's indoors, everybody's in quarantine. So the tendency is when you feel frustrated, you go online right away and then you just say everything there. Sa akin, first of all, just educate yourself first. Just educate yourself first on the matter, whatever it is that's frustrating you, kung anong issue man yan. And once you've educated yourself on it and you've made a stand, then you can share that. And I think another thing is before you, kasi I just want to connect it with social media because I feel like nowadays everybody's at home, and everybody's online. And when somebody's frustrated, usually, I see that the trend now is the first thing that people do is they go online and that's where they voice out everything. But just take some time and calm yourself down and really reread that message before you post it. Like really check it first and consider people who are gonna read it. Because we have to remember that we have this sort of responsibility of whatever we post, even if you're not a celebrity, even if you're not necessarily an influencer or you have a lot of followers, may makakabasa pa rin yan eh. And so you have to be just really responsible with that. Sa akin, if there's an issue, for example, politics, something going on in the Philippines, and that frustrates you, educate yourself first on the matter. And once you've made your stand, then you can share it. But be respectful then of the opinion of others. Just because somebody doesn't agree with you doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong right away, or we gotta condemn them, or we gotta bash them, or we gotta attack them. Parang sa akin really is let's educate each other instead of bringing each other down.
That's very, very true.
Yeah, and if you're frustrated, just really ask yourself, what is it about this issue that frustrates me? And then from there kasi makikita mo na, kasi ito yung values ko eh. As a person, ito yung pinaniniwalaan ko kasi. And then, So yun, the way I see it, like I always connect feelings to like your values and why do you feel frustrated? Why are you angry? What about this issue that's making you angry? Always ask the why, the why, the why. So para you learn more about yourself and you're sure that you really educate yourself and you're sure of whatever before you start posting anything online or before you start voicing out.
Thank you very much for that insight. And yes, we need to be educated, and most importantly, we need to stay calm. Just because we don't agree with something that is happening on the news, or just because we don't exactly agree that something is being imposed onto us, it doesn't mean that we have the right to actively go voice our anger without really providing any means of a solution. At the end of the day, whether we agree with it or not, there is some sort of a logical explanation as to why things are happening. And this is something that a lot of people, especially today, you know how a lot of Filipinos can be on Facebook. A lot of us tend to forget that. So, Conjen, from the diplomatic side of things, is there any input that you can provide on this kind of matter?
Sure. Well, first, exactly what do we mean by patriotism? Does it mean speaking about Philippine politics? Does it mean taking an interest into how we run our government or our governance issues? Or does it end in politics and go forth into the cultural dimension? And I think it's both, and it even goes beyond both politics and politics, governance, or the culture. One thing that I would like to would like to share is the way we try to strategize our diplomacy, cultural diplomacy programs in the States versus that here in the Middle East, here in Dubai. In the States, most of our programs targeted second generation Filipino Americans, because these were the group that did not probably have a first-hand experience about what it means to be Filipino. They already have a hyphenated experience of Filipino-ness. And and my son was saying about this in Hawaii, for instance, the amount of the Ilocano-ness of many Filipinos there was just so prevalent that generations after, it was still there, very late, very much into their consciousness. But as you go generation after generation, it slowly dissipates. And it's something that needs to be pushed forth for an awareness of the Filipino mentality. That in contrast with the way it is over here. Here, Filipino children still hold the Philippine passports, and thus they still have a very, very strong connection. They still speak the language. They still eat the Filipino dishes. They have a very strong network of Philippine culture, and the consciousness of Philippine what's happening back home is there among them. So it's something that I'd like to say not just much work as we do in the States, but here it's already something that is there. It's already in the surface. It's constantly brewing in the consciousness of the young Filipino, but it's something that also needs to be constantly monitored and spoken of as well. And this is exactly what I mean when you have a difference between the hyphenated Filipino, or the ones who are second, third generation Filipino / American, Canadian, European, versus that of the Filipino child here in the UAE.
So it's all about awareness at the end of the day, and that's being aware of yourself, aware of your position, the place that you are in, your stance among your people, and so much more. And just to take a little bit of a breather, we have so many fans in the audience that I would love to greet. Guys, if you would like to, you who are watching right now, do invite your friends to watch the show. And if you have any comments or if you have any input that you would like to share, please don't be afraid to hold back. I know that politics and these kinds of deep discussions are oftentimes a target of a little bit of heat and a little bit of a little bit of unruly debate, but here we accommodate all opinions and all outlooks. So I want to say hello to Irish Peace Season. We have Madame Yasmin Balahadia Cortes, Gilbert Reed, who's joining us from Ireland, Stella Santos from Toronto. We have Chris Daimon. We have Aaron Gallardo, Gerald Silva, Rian Miranda from Saudi Arabia. We also have Leslie joining us. We have a Miss Universe super fan here. We have two actually. We have Elton Lipanta and we have Brian De Gracia. We have Carla Fuentes. We have Richard Noveno and we have Ashley. Thank you so much for joining. Pia, is there any way that you can say hi to the guests? I'm sure so many people have been waiting to see you.
Hello sa mga lahat po ng mga viewers natin dito sa Illustrado Facebook Live. To all our kababayans, English, baka hindi maintindihan ng mga iba nating kababayan.
Tagalog, it's
Okay
alright.
Okay, yes. Hello guys. Kumusta kayo? I hope everybody's doing well and keeping safe.
Thank you so much. And guys, don't forget to share and spread the word. We're here, we're talking about these issues, and I think, it's safe to say that we are going to be adding to our own Filipino pride very soon. But speaking of Filipino pride and even politics and patriotism, it's true that patriotism does amount to Filipino pride. But do you guys think that politics should be a part of patriotism? And I want to go back and I want to ask Alwee again for this matter.
For me, I don't think so because I'm not really into politics, but in terms of like which party I support, it's really like I support what's good for the public, and like for me, being Filipino is not limited also by your passport, because that's where my head's at. Like, can an American, for example, with Filipino experience call himself, I feel like I am Filipino because I feel like being Filipino is also through experience, because I feel like they can take my passport, but they can never take my experience away, my experience of being Filipino. So I don't really think it goes hand in hand with politics, or maybe it's also like different experiences of everyone. Maybe it's also stronger. You feel more Filipino when you're into politics, but like for me personally, it doesn't really go hand in hand.
Francesca, I want to ask for your take on the matter. I know that over there in the US, we're in the middle of a cultural revolution right now. There's the whole Black Lives Matter movement, and there's so much activism, so much minorities are taking this opportunity to step up. So I want to ask you, because these situations get political very easily. Do you think politics belongs to patriotism?
I don't think it has to. And I say that because I was thinking about this and I was like, is it really rooted in, like politics? And I think that like as a fil-am, like I can be proud to be an American, right? But also not support my government, or support my leaders. So I don't think it always has to be side by side, but I think that it often is, right? And so I think what is happening here in America is like really, really important. And it's been a long time coming. And I think that a lot of people here, also because of COVID-19, people are educating themselves on these issues and everyone's talking about it now, because what else are we going to talk about, And I think it's also like really awakened people and really made them realize like, this is something that I've been just like living through, but I don't have to, these are issues that I want to change. And I think Americans are really feeling empowered now to also support other Americans, even if I will never fully understand what a Black person goes through here in America, right? But I am trying to educate myself of how I can better support them, better, how can I support like Black owned businesses and all that stuff. And I'm a fil-am, But it doesn't mean that I also don't care about what's happening in the Philippines. Like, I think people can care about all of these issues. And yeah, but I mean, I think Americans kind of have it a little bit differently, where it's not really rooted in, like the government and stuff like that. But it also, our pride empowers us to take action as well.
Very nice, very nice. Was it Yuji? Do you think that politics should belong in patriotism, or do you believe otherwise?
The first thing I thought of when I read this question was, should it be the other way around? Whenever we talk about politics, I think, at least here in the Philippines, because this is my vantage point now, if you are to involve yourself in politics, it's because you have a love for the people. And my definition of patriotism is, if you love a country, you love it for its people and not for the symbols of the people. So should politics be a part of patriotism? I'm inclined to say yes, because some people, privileged people, may not understand how politics affects their way of life, but there are groups here in the Philippines, activists, students, indigenous peoples, environmental activists, farmers. The Philippines in 2019 was said that was they said it was the most dangerous country for like environmental activists. And we have to understand that politics do affect like these groups of people. And so if we are to like be patriotic, if we are to love our country and to love our people, we have to love all Filipino people, and that includes these groups. So I do think that politics should be part of patriotism.
I'm loving the insight, and this just really stems from being well learned at the end of the day. If we do feel a moral responsibility to our country, then we should act. It doesn't matter how we do it, but we should all be working towards a mutual goal. Bettina, what about you? Should we be involved in politics?
I mean, at the end of the day, I feel like it depends on everyone. I feel like should we know what's going on and should we be educated? Yes, completely. But at the end of the day, is politics a part of patriotism? The basic standard definition of patriotism is love for one's country. And coming from a Filipino school, growing up and going to a Filipino school where you had to say the Panatang Makabayan every single day, the very first sentence it opens with is with the pure, unflinching line of "Iniibig ko ang Pilipinas." And I think that's what patriotism is. It's just loving your country. Good, bad, anything. You need to help your nation, and then your nation helps you back. So that's what patriotism is for me.
Very, very nice input. Conjen, you're on the side of politics, and you've been doing your very best to really represent Filipinos on the global front. So is there any advice that you would like to give to Filipinos who are a little bit confused about this or where they stand? Should we all be involved in politics?
I like it when people are confused. I like it when young Filipinos are confused about their identities, because it makes them question and it makes them probe more carefully into exactly what makes them Filipino. And this is exactly also what I've been telling my children, my two boys, that it's very important that they keep asking the right questions, and they keep asking and finding out exactly what is essential to them be as Filipinos. It doesn't really matter whether they're perfect. They're perfect in their Tagalog or their accent or whatever, or that they know everything that's happening back home. But it does take the interest in trying to find out exactly the Filipino-ness in them amidst a very global cultural dimension where they are in. Having been posted in Europe, in the US, and then now in the Middle East, I do understand that sometimes it may be difficult to put into proper perspective how Filipino they really are. But for as long as they understand what goes on in them, and that they're asking about their identity as Filipinos, it's something that is a good start. And this is what I've also seen for a lot of the other children, a lot of the other Filipino Americans in the U.S. or even Filipino Canadians. They understand the culture and the mindset of their parents and grandparents, and they have that in them, surfacing in them, and they're still questioning and continue being interested in pushing forth the Filipino culture and the Filipino question in their minds.
That's true. And personally, I like to think that if we are politically active in one way or another, it doesn't necessarily have to be in fighting the good fight against corruption or things like that. But there are small things that we can do, even in our regular everyday lives, to champion what it means to be a Filipino. Like we here at Illustrado have been at it for 14 years, and we've always been promoting the idea of Filipino excellence. And I think there is a little bit of a political undertone to that, because it does change the way that Filipinos are represented, especially in a region like this, where we are still struggling on a day-to-day basis to come off right, And on the long end, on the long run, I think this really does amount to Pinoy pride at the end of the day. Be it politics, be it your hustle, your struggle, or just the goals that you have in mind. Justin, what do you think about this?
Can you repeat the question? I got disconnected a while ago.
Okay, so we were asking our panelists here, should everybody be involved in politics?
Well, it really comes down to choice whether you want to be involved in politics or not. That's what makes a country a country. You have the free will to be involved, or whether you want to just be a spectator or you want to engage in politics itself.
I see. Andre, any insight that you would like to share on this as well?
Yeah, what my brother said, it's down to the person's choice whether he wants to be a spectator or someone who's really engaged in politics. But I don't think it's a necessity to be part or be engaged of politics, as long as you know what's happening in your country. It's really up to the person's views.
I see. At the end of the day, I think more. I get what you're saying. I think at the end of the day, more than just being an active political commentator or someone that really wants to push an advocacy, at the end of the day, more or less, the goal to really becoming progressive comes from being part of an informed public. We all have to be well informed if we are not necessarily taking direct action, at least so that we have a certain mindset that we can work towards. And in working towards something, Pia, I want to ask you this. How can you get involved in politics, but in the best way possible? Especially with a figure like you being a role model, I'm sure that you have plenty of stories to tell. You yourself, as a matter of fact, are a UNAIDS Goodwill ambassador too. So surely there's a lot of things and advocacies that you'd like to represent for, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think whether you are your question was like for a celebrity, like to be speaking about politics. I think whether you're
not necessarily a celebrity, but more or less someone of many advocacies and someone that people look up to in general.
I think the way I see it as like kind of a responsibility of just being aware of what's going on around me, whether I'm in New York or in the Philippines, aware of what's going on in my country. And with politics, it's really hard, especially, for me, I have to be very careful with what I share and what I post, because nowadays it's so hard. You say one thing, it gets misinterpreted. I mean, I'll give you an example. Say I say, I love oranges, right? And then somebody will say, oh, so you hate apples and mangoes and pineapples. Educate yourself. You're canceled. But like parang paano na ba? Parang I just want to share and I just want to, say my stand. So parang ang hirap talaga. Like, that's something that is a challenge for me, and I know is a challenge for a lot of celebrities or a lot of beauty queens or influencers back home. Na paano ba? Whatever I say kasi parang naiikot na nakikitaan ng mali eh. But I've learned out of the many times that I've been bashed and canceled and just for the many times that I've been bashed, I've learned that you won't make a mistake if you're true to yourself. Like, ask yourself, like, what's really important to me? Pia, ano bang importante sa'yo? Why is this issue important to you? Why are you affected by it? What about this? Kunyari sa politics, what about this issue? What is it about this that's hurting you right now? Bakit? Why are you feeling angry towards it? So you ask yourself, you go into your core values and ask yourself, kasi ganito, ito kasi yung pinaniniwalaan ko, ito kasi yung yung kinalakihan ko, ito yung turo sa akin, ito yung ganyan. So then you know that you're not just kind of being influenced by what other people are telling you that you should say, or parang being influenced by what you see online or what everybody's posting or what everybody's talking about in the news. You know na parang, okay, I've educated myself on the issue, number one. I've calmed myself down. I know myself and I know my core, and then I'll share it. And then if somebody doesn't agree with me, or I encounter somebody who has the parang another opinion, like the opposite of what you believe in, then calmly, and this is hard. This is the hard part, to just educate each other. Parang huwag tayong magbatuhan ng kung ano-ano sa isa't isa, tapos minsan nagiging personalan na. Yung noong umpisa, usapan, ito lang, tapos ngayon naging ganito kalaki. I really think it's hard. It's hard, especially with social media now. Everybody has access to phones, and it's so easy to just like attack, But it's hard. I feel you guys, nararamdaman ko yung pressure. Lahat tayo, but yun lang. Sa akin, yun lang. It's just educate yourself on it and make sure you're not angry and you voice yourself out properly. And then when somebody tries to say otherwise, then you can also either educate them or actually educate them. I don't want to say convince them that they're wrong. No, para educate them and then let them figure it out for themselves also. Kung talagang naniniwala kang tama ka. I hope I'm making sense. I hope I'm not like rambling. It gets me.
Love the input, and yes, of course, you're making sense. We all understand, and just going back to your little example of fruits. If anyone says that you hate mangoes, I'm sorry. I mean, a little bit of Pinoy pride here, but us Filipinos really have the best mangoes in the world. I'm sorry, ha. I'm sorry to our non-Filipino friends who are watching. But yes, a little bit of an icebreaker here. And we, at the end of the day, know, despite our biases, despite our political alignments, or the disagreements that we have with people, we need to be responsible. Dapat responsible and dapat kalmado lagi. That's what it should be at the end of the day. And I just want to ask a little quick question. Also, we have a question from the audience here. We have it from Bernard Yabut. What is Pinoy pride? And I'll get back to you guys in a minute. But for now, I want to ask Michelle, what is Pinoy pride to you?
Hi. So Pinoy pride to me is a lot of things. I'm a first generation Filipina. My mom's from Batangas and my dad's side is from Zamboanga. And because I've got to experience both sides. So on my dad's side, one of my lolas was a congresswoman and she lived on a compound. But then on my other side, my mom's side, she lived on a farmland. And I think Filipino pride transcends from just like the heart of everything. Like, where does your heart stand and how do you treat other people? And for me, it's just embracing that this Filipino experience is different all over the place. But it's also embracing the toxic characteristics. I think Filipino pride is easily always celebrating Filipino-ness, but there's a lot of things about Filipino-ness that we have to unlearn, in my opinion, especially coming from the page that we have. People are also expressing traumas they experience, and it's embracing and being vulnerable as Filipinos and sharing that we don't always have to express being strong and that we all do suffer something, especially that there's still there are parts of the Philippines that are still becoming more, let's say, stronger. And I think Filipino pride for me has just been embracing that the Filipino experience is based all around the world. We're a global community. It's not just in the Philippines, it's not just in Dubai, it's not just in the US, but the community is strong wherever we are. And it's just I think what Pia said earlier is that when you meet a Filipino, it's oh, what's good? What's good? You're family already. And I think that's something that I don't, because I'm Filipino and Chinese, and there's a distinct difference in my Filipino pride versus my Chinese side. Right. And this is just something that's deeply rooted in community. I think Filipino hospitality is something that's rooted in our pride, is that we just want to provide a good experience and a good experience as a Filipino. I want you to remember, as a Filipino, we are this. We are kind people. We are open. We love to feed. And yeah.
Yeah, I think Filipino pride goes way beyond a feeling that you only feel within yourself, because I think Filipino pride is a feeling that it stands outwards. Again, in what you say, sharing and embracing experiences, and also partaking in different activities, be it cultural or non-cultural. Dapat na lang, what's important is that we keep our pride up by being around each other, by validating each other, and in the end, always reaching a sort of logical conclusion. And the thing is, with Filipino pride nowadays, actually, a lot of people don't like to claim Pinoy pride, because a lot of people, and this is even a topic that I've been debating for so long, a lot of Filipino pride, for some people, even corresponds to a little bit of ignorance, being one-sided on the political field, or sometimes just blatantly ignoring things that you should acknowledge as a Filipino. Francesca, what is it to you? Is there any input that you have from any experience that you can share?
In regard, you mean the negative sides of Pinoy pride?
The negative or the positive? We want to know, what is Pinoy pride to you?
I think Pinoy pride is just, for me, really connecting. And because I am a fil-am, a lot of my upbringing was trying to really learn more about my Filipino culture. And I think my access to that was really my parents, which I think are watching. Hi. But I think for me, the most tangible way was really through food. And I've realized that from talking to other fil-ams, it's that is the most tangible way by which we were able to show our pride. And I think, growing up, I had Filipino friends. I also had non-Filipino friends. And one of the biggest things is them coming to your house and your mom cooking for them. And that is a way in which they were introduced to some part of Filipino culture, right? It's obviously more than just food. But I think it is such a powerful and tangible way by which we can show our love, who we are. Our food represents where we come from, the regionality. Filipino food is very different from what you find in Luzon and what you find in Mindanao, right? And it also represents what the environment is and the people from that place. And I know I have some viewers who told me in the Philippines, it's really more about what region you're from. I'm Ilocano, I'm from Cebu, Cebu, we have the best spicy lechon, which it's amazing, based on what I've had. And I think there's this understanding that makes people so, so proud. And it makes me really proud. And I'm so glad, because of my series Halo Halo, which is exploring Filipino food in the US, it was really meant for Filipino Americans to kind of understand that this is how Filipinos have immigrated to America and how they've adapted to where they are. And that even goes for Filipinos in Dubai, elsewhere around the world. We've all adapted. We've all, like, sometimes we don't have the ingredients that we grew up with in the Philippines, so you have to adapt. Like apple cider vinegar, so common here in the US, is what a lot of people use for the adobo, right? So it's also about adapting. And I think, like, I'm so proud of that in a lot of ways, which can also be negative. People say that Filipinos just have adapted too much, you know, like, and they kind of like now want to hide their culture. But I don't see that now. I think fil-ams, and I'm pretty sure Michelle can also talk about this, like, no matter where you are, I think now we're feeling really empowered to talk about our culture. And it's for me, like, visibly seeing that in how other people, Filipinos and non-Filipinos, are now enjoying and really understanding more about our cuisine. I think, like, that's, like, really, really great. But it is more than that. It is essentially about the people. Like, same as what Pia said, you know, anytime you meet another Filipino, wherever you go, it makes you so happy.
Yes, that's very true. I think one way of really actually getting inspired to learn about your culture is actually through food. Here in the UAE, I'm talking recently, let's say maybe within the last 10 years, there's actually been an explosion of Filipino food. And, you know, back then when all of this was happening, when Max landed in the UAE, Shakey's landed in the UAE, Mang Inasal, all these different franchises just start coming in. It's like, I started feeling nostalgic, even though I didn't grow up with this. I don't know why. I grew up going to McDonald's, not Max's. But then, like, I first went into a Max's here. We went to the Max's at, you Dubai kids know this one. We went to Max's at Al Ghurair. We walk in, ang puno-puno. There's a birthday every 5 minutes. I brought my Filipino friends who didn't go to before. Sabi nila, wow, I feel so proud to be Filipino. I don't know, maybe the chicken was just that good, but, like, still. And
yeah,
I think
we really show up. That's the thing. Like, that's what I really show up.
Yeah.
Whether it's on the internet or in person, in the Jollibee line, you know, at a new location, we, like, really show up.
Oh yeah, we bring the whole family too. And even if we're just alone, we're always getting something for our family, diba? And I just want to say here, I have a comment from Jason Keith on Pinoy Pride. And he says, Pinoy Pride is still having hope even though your country is going through dark days. And I think that really is the essence of what it is. And that hope can be inspired and translated into and by so many things. Andre, what is Pinoy Pride to you? How can you exercise it?
Showing Pinoy pride is basically being a patriot, you know, showing our non-Filipino friends or friends outside the Philippines, like, what our culture is, being proud for who we are. So in Dubai, I went to an international school, and we had a day where each country would have a booth to show your culture. So what we did was, I was in charge of the Filipino booth because there were only two of us, two Filipinos in my school in Dubai. So what we did was we brought in different foods of, say, halo-halo. We had ube, we had taho. And surprisingly, all my Arab friends liked it. And from that day on, you know, they would go up to me, hey, bro, do you have chicken adobo or whatever, when they came to our house. So showing Pinoy pride is basically sharing our culture with different people and knowing our roots, where we come from, basically.
Knowing your roots and sharing your culture is by far, I think, the most direct way to promote Filipino pride. I remember that in every social outing that I go to, if I meet a new person, even before I tell my name, I always make it a thing to say I'm Filipino. You know, I'm Filipino, and you know, maybe that's just me also proclaiming a little bit of Pinoy pride, but it gets the fact out there that we Filipinos come in all shapes, all sizes, and we do so many different things in our culture. Yuji, from Dubai all the way to the Philippines, has your idea of Pinoy pride changed?
I mean, definitely. One of the good things for me personally about moving here is that I'm no longer a minority, and that changes your whole outlook. Because when you live in America or Europe or the Middle East, you don't really have a sense of being Filipino. You have more of a sense of, oh, you're in somebody else's country, and that's what I felt. But when I moved here, I felt like, wow, so this is what Wakanda is essentially. That's what I thought. And for me, Pinoy pride, Filipino pride, it expanded. The horizon for Filipino pride expanded because I grew up Dubai. You know this. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, it was a desert. No art, no culture, very little sense of history, at least for me. And I grew up thirsting for like art, for literature, for theater, for good things to see myself in. And when I move here, I see the Cultural Center of the Philippines. I see university theater productions, and I see people that look like me and that speak Filipino and that share my parents' outlook and values and my values, the values that I grew up with. And moving here really, as a diaspora kid, moving here really expanded my feeling of Filipino pride, in that I now know that the Filipino, more than ever, is a creative person. She is an intelligent person. She is a powerful person. She is resilient, but we should not romanticize that resilience.
Mhm. I see. Thank you for sharing your story, essentially, because I think surely if the image of Filipinos is changing out there, then the ideas and what we look for is also going to change. Now, all this being said, Bettina, what do you want to see more from Filipinos? What do you want to see more of? Is there something you think that we could be doing more as Pinoys?
I think at the end of the day, it's just, again, educating ourselves. I think we all have a responsibility to educate ourselves on where we came from and what's going on, no matter where you are in the world, and, promoting our culture and just owning your identity and your heritage and supporting each other, supporting Filipino. There are so many local Filipino businesses wherever you go, and I think it's just showing love for each other.
Showing love for each other is definitely the way to go. I mean, love wins. Love wins at the end of the day, one way or another. Alwee, is there anything that you'd like to add? What can we see more of from Filipinos? Or what do you want to see less of, for that matter?
Well, I think the Pinoy pride thing is so... I mean, I feel like it sounds much of a big deal for us. Like, parang ang dami mo kailangan gawin to become a legit Filipino. But like, is doing one thing and not doing one thing make you less of a Filipino? I don't think so. Like, you are Filipino because you share your experiences that connect you back to your roots, right? And I think like for most of us, and also even for Pia, like being in a global platform, we are so fortunate to be able to share our stories as Filipinos to non-Filipinos. Like making them understand, like we are the best ambassadors for our country at the moment, through food, through fashion, through music, through our creative work. And I think that's good enough. As long as you're using your voice, actually, like, look at this artist from the Philippines, or like you showing up in the office in a multinational company, working with non-Filipinos and doing your best is good enough. That's showing like how good values are of Filipinos. So I feel like we should also not pressure ourselves so much. So yeah, that's just me.
Still, even if it is a personal opinion, it's one that I think we should all take into consideration, because at the end of the day, each one teach one. And sometimes, like you said, just being there, placing yourself at the right place, at the right moment, at the right time is already going to elevate you, knowing that you are championing first and foremost yourself. Um, Justin, you've been traveling a lot as a diplomatic child, but also you study here, you study there, and for sure you see so many different people. You get to be around so many different minorities and majorities as well. So, with that experience in mind, do you think that as a Filipino, there is something more or something less that you can contribute?
Well, growing up in the U.S., I was like really young when I got to the U.S. I was around 8 years old, so I wasn't really like thinking about like Pinoy pride or something like that at such a young age. But then, as soon as I started growing up, I started to think more about who I am as a Filipino and where I was in the U.S. So I would, like you said, like food is the best way to one of the best ways to share your cultures. And when I was a kid, I would always, whenever we had a class party, I would bring in adobo or like any other Filipino food, and that would be my way to connect with other people. And I think my appreciation being a Filipino grew even deeper when I moved back to the Philippines and spent my high school there. Ateneo does a great job of making sure you are very proud to be Filipino by learning about Filipino culture, such as the work of Dr. Jose Rizal, or strengthening your language, your Tagalog, and other things such as that.
I see. So what you're saying is, aside from promoting your culture or bringing a little bit of your culture wherever you go, it's also, I will not say it's imperative, but it's also a definite plus if we begin to educate ourselves about our country and a little bit more about the history, and even just by learning about the movers and shakers that have really made our country what it is today. I think we will become a little bit more well learned, and we become a little bit more well informed, and I think in general that's just being progressive at the end of the day, right?
Absolutely. Knowledge is power. The more you know about the history of something, the more, the deeper you have, and the deeper an appreciation you have for Filipino culture.
Very good, very good. Conjen, I want to shift this to you. You're responsible for the well-being of so many Filipinos in the UAE. Of course, not to mention the fact that there are over 800,000 Filipinos here, and that's such a big number. So taking those numbers into account, and taking into account, of course, the people that you deal with and the kind of responsibilities that we have as overseas Filipinos, what do you want to see more of? And what do you definitely want to see less of?
I'd like the Filipino community here to be more attuned with exactly how to move forward, rather than to put the blame on somebody else or some sectors of society. When people understand that it is imperative that they cooperate and collaborate and partner with each other, regardless of political ideology, regardless of where in the Philippines they're from, or regardless of what language, Filipino language they speak, then we can think more as a Filipino rather than fragmented Filipinos at that. And the more we gain the respect of the international community by showing them that we are acting as Filipinos per se, and not as different Filipinos slash Ilocano or Cebuano or what have you. And I'd also like to see a more intelligent discussion, especially when it comes to our political issues. It's fun to see everybody involved on Facebook, but I'd like to see a more in-depth analysis of what they think our governance issues should be, our policy formulation and execution should be. And lastly, I'd like to see young people, such as our guests right now, to become more involved. It's great to see older folks, my generation, to be involved in political discussions and things about the Philippines. But it's even more. It gives me more pride to see young people like you to actually discuss and dissect the issues that are of importance to the Filipinos. One last thing also, I always hear the term Pinoy pride, and it does become quite a sensation when Filipinos have the international stage with them. So when you have people like Miss Pia going into the global arena and bringing pride to everybody, it becomes heightened, it becomes highlighted when Leia is online, or when people like Michael Cinco capture the imagination of the global community. Pinoy pride is always there. But I'd also like people to understand that Pinoy pride also exists in your regular average Jose or average Juan, and whatever they do, whatever small or increments of success any Filipino for that matter has, is something that should be proud of regardless of where you are.
Sorry, I was muted there. Thank you so much for the input. And yes, the youth is the future. At the end of the day, the youth really is the future. Now, Pia, is there any input that you would like to add to the matter? What do you think Pinoys can do more? And also, what do you think they can do a little bit less?
Just listening to everyone, like, natutuwa ako kasi everybody's making like really interesting points. And I want to add to what Alwee mentioned earlier. Like, kasi what you said earlier, this thing, I used to say this a lot before when I was still Miss Universe living in New York, and I would speak to the Filipino audience na mga nasa US, ganyan. I would always say to them, hindi kailangan may sash ka or may crown ka or title holder ka para maging ambassador ka ng Philippines. Just you alone, being a Filipino, everywhere you go, sa trabaho mo, pagpasok mo sa school, ikaw yung Filipino doon, or baka ikaw lang out of like a little group of small group of small community of Filipinos. Pag na-excite ako, nagkakaganito ako, guys, ganyan. You are an ambassador already. Parang naging title holder ka na rin. You're representing us everywhere you go. So you're representing us. So think about that. Doon pa lang Pinoy pride na, 'di ba? Hindi naman kailangan na sikat ka, beauty queen ka, parang marami kang followers para sabihin mo na Pinoy pride and I'm making a difference. No, like just you being you wherever you are in the world, you are representing us, the rest of us, everybody back home.
I love it. You don't need to have all these accolades at the end of the day to really prove a point. But actually, in being an ambassador, Pia, I do understand that there is an advocacy that you are currently campaigning for. Is there anything that you would like to talk about with regards to that?
Yes, everybody knows that I work with UNAIDS and Love Yourself back here in the Philippines. We do a lot of things, actually. We're always coming up with new campaigns and new campaigns to spread awareness, to educate more people. Malawak talaga yung mga ginagawa namin. So I encourage everyone, please check out our websites. I mean, you'll find it all in my social media anyway. You'll see it there. I post a lot of updates, so you see what we're working on at the moment. Aside from that, I'm also working with WWF Philippines. Bago lang to. Nitong quarantine lang actually namin sinimulan. And we're doing 3 fundraising campaigns. And I'm happy to say that 2 out of the 3 are already fully funded. So okay na. Isa na lang ang kailangan ko ng tulong nyo, guys. It's to help our whale shark protectors back home. Dito sa Donsol, sa Sorsogon, sa Masbate. So, makikita nyo naman yung progress namin. You'll see kung ilan na donations, kung magkano na. And very transparent also. WWF is one of the most trusted and one of the biggest organizations in the world. So hindi mawawala yung tinulong nyo, pupuntahan talaga yan. All the details are all over my social media accounts anyway. So please guys, if you can, hindi naman pilitan to, but kung kaya nyo lang, and kung hindi nyo rin naman kaya mag-donate, okay na okay lang din, i-share nyo na lang yung link or i-share nyo yung poster, ganyan, malaking tulong na yun. Kasi baka naman may makakita.
Thank you very much for sharing your advocacies with us, Pia. And I'd like to thank everybody who is still tuned in this far. It's a really big project we've undertaken, and you know, all of us were shaking in our pants earlier because we were like, I hate this is gonna be, you know, hit or miss. But thank you, salamat sa inyong lahat for tuning in this long. We will now reach the final segment of our live stream, and you know, just a few quick words. I want to ask everybody here, starting with Michelle. Michelle, just based on all of the knowledge that you've shared and that you've witnessed being shared in front of you in this discussion, what is something that you would like to say to the audience? What's the one thing Filipinos can do to serve themselves and their country?
What a question. I think if I were to advise, one thing that I'm still learning is I think what my overall solution for all the hate and frustrations in the world is just being a little bit more patient with others. And if you're not going to try to attempt to understand other people's situation, then there's no point in judging them in the first place. So I think as Filipinos, it's easy. I think as just humans overall, it's easy to come from a place of judgment and frustration and lack of patience. And if you feel those frustrations, just remind yourself, if I don't have the time to try to understand you, then I should just keep my mouth shut or just try to understand that person.
Very insightful and very, very proactive. Thank you. Andre, if you had any last few words to say to the audience, what would it be?
For what can Filipinos do to serve the country? Everyone's different, so everyone has a role in society that they're supposed to fulfill. And if you feel like you're alone or you can't do anything to serve your country, there always is. For example, you know, there's always fundraisers, there's always campaigns that you can help with other people, and just there's always a spot for you in this world.
It's always a spot for you in this world. I love it. Francesca, what about you? What's the last thing that you can share to everybody for this show?
I just wanted to say that I hope we as Filipinos can one day get to a place where I feel like once you leave the Philippines, you're always having this battle with your identity of just trying to prove to others why you belong here, right? Or like why you belong here, why am I important? When it's like Filipinos have such a huge influence in our healthcare industries, you know, in the arts. And it's like, we're really killing it out there, you know, we're really doing it. And I just want to encourage people to find your passion, you know, follow it, and also share that with others, and then be supportive of fellow Filipinos without the judgment, like Michelle was saying. You know, I think be respectful and be kind to each other when you're educating other people, especially non-Filipinos. So I hope we can get there one day, and I want everyone to know that no matter what you're doing, it matters and it's important. It's important to Filipinos everywhere.
And I think we will get there one day because we're already on the path to it. This has been a very opportune time for everybody to really just step their game up. And Justin, what about you? What can Filipinos do to serve their country?
I think the most important thing is just always remain united, no matter what you're going through, because in order to get to where you want to be, the country has to be headed towards the same direction and has the same idea for where they want to go. Because if you're not united, it's difficult to do.
I see. I see. Thank you. Bettina, being the proactive personality that you are, what can you impart onto Filipinos? What can Filipinos do to move towards a better future?
I think, well, at least speaking as a Dubai kid who spent most of her life outside of the Philippines, it's always been important for me to find something to nourish my Filipino pride. And I found that over the past few years, that nourishment comes from listening to stories of other Filipinos and connecting to other Filipinos and, getting inspired by the triumphs and positive actions by Filipinos here in Dubai. So I think it's important to find something that will always reel you back in, especially when you live, not in the Philippines.
I see. Thank you. It's really good at the end of the day. You need something to keep you grounded. And I'm not crying. It's just my eyes are itchy. So I also want to ask Alwee, what can Filipinos do to serve their country in one way or another?
I think for me, because the question is, what's the sense of the Filipino pride? Like, if we're just being proud among ourselves, among our community, and we're known for that, like Filipinos are very, very cliquish. I have a lot of non-Filipino friends tell me like, "Oh, I want to try Filipino food or a Filipino restaurant in Dubai, but like it's all Filipinos, and I'm so scared to like go there." So like, let's open our gates. Let's welcome other people to try and experience who we are, our culture, and our values. And let's take it out there. Like if we really want to progress further, let's take the conversation further. Let's not just talk about Filipino pride among our Filipino friends. Let's, go forth and conquer, you guys.
Very nice. Taking the conversation further is one way that we strengthen our narrative. And Yuji, what about you? What input do you have? What do you think Filipinos can do to serve their country and their people, direct or non-direct?
Well, this is going to be easier for some, for some people than for others. But I think really educating yourself about the Philippines, especially if you know nothing about it, and especially if you live far away from it. Like my awakening would be when I first learned about a person named Jose Rizal in Dubai when I was like 13 years old. And then, he wrote 2 books. I read those as well. And that's when I started to understand, the Philippines is something. It's not just an abstract thing in my head that my parents used to live in and now they don't, that I was supposed to live in, but now, I live somewhere else. So I think it really should be educating yourself about your roots, educating yourself about what the country was, its history, and what the country is today. But doing so by yourself and like being able to analyze your sources and trying to find the truth for yourself. And once you do find the truth, allow that truth to influence your actions based on your love of your country. If it makes you angry, if the current condition of the Philippines makes you angry, use that anger to bring about change. Don't just like simmer in that anger, and don't throw that anger at other people. Because one thing I've noticed about, say, the political climate and patriotism here is that a lot of it is guided through ego. And one thing I've learned is everybody votes and everybody does what they do. Everybody does what they do because they want to eat, because they want to live. And it's not because they're loyal to a person, or it's not because they're loyal to a principle. Sometimes it's just I need to get by today. And people need to see that. People need to see that. Privileged people need to see that. And people need to let their egos down and be able to see how the other side, see the Philippines and want the Philippines to be, so that everybody can work together. That's what I think.
That's true. And at the end of the day, we seek nothing but the truth. And I think everybody is inherently good, so we all have to chase the best intention within each other. And that pretty much brings us to the end of our live stream. Guys, salamat sa inyong lahat for tuning in. And I just want to say maraming salamat din to our very special senior members of this panel, Conjen Paul Cortes and Pia Wurtzbach. Thank you so much for joining us. And thank you guys for coming together and just really giving us this opportunity to engage with role models and diplomats. It's not a chance that everybody else has, so let's all take out something positive from this. Conjen, do you have any last words to share?
Young Filipinos, just keep talking amongst yourselves, keep finding out exactly what the Filipino perspective is all about, keep trying to understand where we are as a country, and for the older the older Filipinos, my generation, let's be good examples to our children. Let's show them the positive side of being who we are, and let's keep in mind that whatever we do, say, or think will always reflect on what we think of our country and of ourselves. And continue be happy. Have faith in our people, guys. Things are going to get better and better all the time.
Have faith and persevere indeed. Pia, Miss Universe 2015. If there's any last thing that you can say to the audience before we wrap up, what would it be?
Gusto ko kasi to end in a light note naman, no? Parang, guys, kailan pa ba tayo naging sobrang divided? Diba, hindi naman natin to culture din. Sama-sama tayo, meron tayong bayanihan, nagtutulungan tayo, meron tayong community spirit. Nasaan na yun? Parang, let's try to remember that again. And let's try to, lalo na ngayon may pandemya, may pinagdadaanan tayong lahat. Hindi lang yung mga Filipinos, but yung buong mundo. Let's help each other, be more patient, be more understanding, be more forgiving towards one another. Whatever happened to that, diba? I think Filipino pride should be celebrated every day. And representative tayong lahat. Sa mga nanonood nito ngayon, kung feeling mo na ano naman magagawa ko, isang tao lang naman ako dito. Parang hindi wala ka lang sash, pero representative ka din. And so my advice is, or my message is, ako naniniwala talaga ako sa kabutihan ng puso ng mga Filipino. Ako naniniwala talaga ako dyan. So just, i-spread nyo yan. Just keep, mahirap sa madaling gawin, madaling sabihin, pero let's stay positive. Kaya natin to, guys. Lahat tayo pinagdadaanan natin to, pero kapit lang, kaya natin to, and we're gonna come out of here better people, smarter, wiser, more understanding, more forgiving, just better people. And alam ko, kaya natin to.
Alam na this, everybody can do it. Thank you guys. Thank you for joining us. Be kind, love one another, don't be ashamed to be a Filipino, and most importantly, let's share all the love. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of This Week Live. Thank you for joining us and staying with us this far. We'll be having more live streams down the line. And to those of you who would like to participate within our lineup, just send us a message from wherever you are across the world, because it's not only Filipino to be from the Philippines, but it's a Filipino thing to reach out and expand. Maraming salamat, guys. Thank you, guys. And this reaches the end of our live stream. So good night from Dubai. Good night from the Philippines. Good morning, America. And we'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.
Mabuhay.
Thank you.